Reggio Dolphins. Welcome back to another installment of the Westing game. Today we're going to be reading chapters 13 and 14. However, before we do that, we're going to review chapters 11 and 12. So again, taking a look at our notebook, binder paper, Google Doc. First, looking at our two vocabulary words. The words were implication and paraphernalia. Implication is a noun, and it means something implied or suggested as naturally to be inferred or understood. So this is to think about making maybe an accusation or making a statement that you're implying, but you're not outwardly stating. Like you're not being very direct by what you're stating. You're kind of giving suggestions or clues towards that. Paraphernalia is also a noun, and it means equipment, personal belongings, or furnishing used in or necessary for a particular activity. If you remember, we talked about the paraphernalia in Angela's tapestry bag. That was speaking specifically to the needle and thread and the things that she had in there to do her needle point. If you remember, she's embroidering the letter D on a lot of items when the group gets together. Now, the next activity that I asked you guys to do probably didn't make a lot of sense yesterday, but I promise it's going to make a lot more sense today. I just wanted us ahead of the curve as we're collecting the clues. I asked you to look up the lyrics for America the Beautiful and to either copy or print out the first stanza and to remind ourselves that it's not what you have, but what you don't have that counts. I then showed you the clues that we had collected and asked you to maybe analyze or think about ways that you felt like these clues could potentially have an impact or a connection to America the Beautiful. And then the last thing that I asked you guys to do, and notice I wrote here answers will vary because this was really just about your opinions. Who did you think the burglar was and why? And who did you think the bomber was and why? We're going to learn more about both the bomber and a little bit more about the burglar in these next two chapters as well. So if you have opinions about who you think not just killed Sam Westing, if you have theories, or if you think that you have an idea of who the burglar or bomber is, I'd love for you to drop those in the comments. And I'd love for us to start having a conversation about the whodunit in the comments. If you type me your theories and ideas, make sure to support that with evidence and pieces of the story that you're tying it back to, and I will be happy to respond and continue that dialogue. Okay, so today, chapters 13 and 14, two new vocabulary words. You may want to pause the video in order to capture this. Our words are scrumptious and contender. And then our activities are to continue to fill out your clue cards, which we're going to come back to. And then I actually want you to practice summary writing. We haven't really done that yet for these activities. Summary writing is basically giving us a synopsis of what has been going on without all of the details. I'm not asking for every little detail. That would be a retell. I'm asking for the general main points, the main ideas. So giving me in roughly 5 to 10 sentences what occurred in chapters 13 and 14 today. So pulling up my clue cards, I just wanted to go through a couple added items that I put onto my clue card. So you may want to add these if you didn't do this yesterday. One is that Turtle Wexler, her real name is either Alice or Tabitha Ruth. Remember when she was asked what her real name was, she said that her name was Alice, but her mom said it was Tabitha Ruth. Flora Baumbach, we learned that she had a daughter, and her name is Rosalie and is now gone. We don't know what gone means. I think that we can infer that that may mean dead, but we don't know for sure because the term that is used is gone. Another one that I added was Sandy McSuthers. He was fired from the Westing paper mill. I think this one's pretty important because this could show another grudge that the person is holding and could present motive for the murder. J.J. Ford lives in 4D, which stands for Ford, or that they rhyme, they go together. This was part of the clues that people were trying to put together as to say that maybe there was a connection that J.J. Ford was involved. Okay. This one, Theo Theodorakis. I put it here under Theo. Really, this is about his dad, but I think that we need to at least make note of it, is that his father, George, escorted Violet Westing to a party that the Westings had. This was found in the newspaper articles. I think there was a picture of the two of them. And then finally, we have Sidel Pulaski. The first one that we had was that she limps and is on crutches, but Turtle claims that she's using the crutch for attention and doesn't actually have an ailment or infirmity, right? She doesn't have an injury. And we also find out that she speaks Polish and that those shorthand notes that she made were in Polish, which is interesting. That's another new fact, that she speaks another language. And then Angela Wexler, we find out that she potentially, again, this is a claim made by Turtle, does not want to marry Denton D. Deer. Which, if this is pointing in the direction of Angela being unhappy or unsatisfied with her current life and her current standing, that could also potentially have her involved in maybe something that is not so kind or maybe a little bit more deceptive. She's not being truthful in who she is or how she feels. Okay, so that's what I've added to my clue cards. I'll continue to share what I add to these as we read, because I'm sure that that will help you as well. Now, our reading is going to be a bit long today. We have about 20 pages to get through, so hang in there with me. All right, here we go. Chapter 13, The Second Bomb. No one was in the kitchen of Shin Hu's restaurant when the bomber set a tall can labeled monosodium glutamate behind similar cans on a shelf. The color-striped candle would burn down to the fuse at 6:30. Whoever was working there would be at the other end of the room. No one would be hurt. Due to the unfortunate damage to the coffee shop, Shin Hu's restaurant is prepared to satisfy all dinner accommodations. Order down or right up to the 5th floor. Treat your taste buds to a scrumptious meal while feasting your eyes on the stunning snowscape before it melts away. Reasonable prices, too. Grace Wexler tacked her sign to the elevator wall as she rode up to her new job. She was going to be the seating hostess. "Where's the cook?" Mr. Hu shouted, meaning his wife. He found Madame Hu in their rear 4th floor apartment, kneeling before her bamboo trunk, fingering mementos from her childhood in China. He hurried her up to the kitchen, too harried to find the words that would explain what was happening. Now, where was that lazy son of his? Doug jogged in from a tiring workout on the stairs. How was he supposed to know the restaurant would be opening early? Nobody bothered telling him. Some student you are. Anyone with a brain of an anteater could have figured that out. People are short of food. The coffee shop is closed for repairs. Stop arguing. Go take a shower and put on your busboy outfit. Get moving. Don't you think you're rather hard on the boy? Grace commented. Somebody's got to give him a shove. If he had his way, he'd do nothing but run, Hu replied between bites of chocolate. You're not so easy on Angela either. Angela? Angela was born good, the perfect child. As for the other one, well, it's not easy being a parent, Hu said woefully. You can say that again. Grace held her breath. Her husband would have done just that, said it again, but Mr. Hu only nodded in shared sympathy. What a gentleman. Only Mr. and Mrs. Theodorakis ordered down. The other tenants of Sunset Towers lined up at the reservations desk, waiting for Grace Windsor Wexler to lead the way. Oversized menus clutched in her arms. Grace felt the first proud stirrings of power rush up from her pedicured toes to the very top, curl on her head. If Uncle Sam could pair off people, so could she. You see your brother every day, Chris. How about eating with someone else for a change? She wheeled the boy to a window table without waiting for an answer. It would have been a yes. The two cripples together, Sidel Pulaski thought. She'd show that high and mighty hostess. She'd show them all. She and Chris could have private jokes, too, and everyone would be sorry they weren't sitting with them. What's gibbon? Chris asked, baffled by the strange words on the menu. I think it's boiled grasshopper. Sidel screwed up her face and Chris laughed. Or chocolate-covered mousse. French fry mousse, Chris offered. Now Sidel laughed. They both laughed heartily, but no one envied them. Your brother seems to be enjoying Miss Pulaski. Theo nodded, awed by the beautiful Angela. 3 years older than he, so fair-skinned and blonde, so unattainable. Here he was sitting at the very same table with her, just the two of them, and he couldn't think of a single thing to say that wasn't stupid or childishly stupid. Usually the quiet one, Angela tried again. Are you planning to go to college next year? Theo nodded, then shook his head. Say something, idiot. I got a scholarship to Madison, but I'm not going. I'm going to work instead. What big, worried, sky-blue eyes. The operation for Chris will be very expensive. That was worse. Now she's feeling sorry for him. If Chris had been born that way, maybe it wouldn't be so bad, but he was a perfectly normal kid, a great kid, and he's smart too. About 4 years ago, he started to get clumsy, just little things at first. Perhaps my fiancé can help, Angela bit her lip. Theo was not asking for charity, and fiancé, what an old-fashioned, silly word. I went to college for a year. I wanted to be a doctor, but, well, we don't have as much money as my mother pretends. Dad said he could manage if that's what I really wanted, but my mother said it was too difficult for a woman to get into medical school. Why was she gabbing like this? I want to be a writer, Theo said. That really sounded like kid stuff. Would you go back to college if you won the inheritance? Angela looked down. It was a question she did not want to answer, or could not answer. Long before becoming a judge, Josie Joe Ford had decided to stop smiling. Smiling without good reason was demeaning. A serious face put the smiler on the defensive. A rare smile put a nervous witness at ease. She now bestowed one of her rare smiles on the dressmaker. I'm so glad we have this chance to become acquainted, Mrs. Baumbach. I had so little time to chat with my guests last night. It was a wonderful party. Flora Baumbach appeared even smaller and rounder than she was as she sat twisting her napkin with hands accustomed to being busy. Was her face permanently creased from years of pleasing customers, or was a tragedy lurking behind that grin? Have you always specialized in wedding gowns? Mr. Baumbach and I had a shop for many years, Baumbach's for the bridal and groom. Perhaps you've heard of it. I'm afraid not. The judge would have said no in any case to keep her witness talking. Perhaps you heard of Flora's bridal gowns. That's what I call my shop after my husband left. I don't know much about groom's clothes. They're mostly rentals anyway. Flora Baumbach lost her timidity. The judge let her chat away. I'm using heirloom lace on the bodice of Angela's gown. It's been in my family for 3 generations. I wore it at my wedding, and I dreamed that someday I'd have a daughter who would wear it too. But Rosalie didn't come along until I was in my 40s, and... The dressmaker stopped. Her lips tightened into an even wider grin. Angela will make such a beautiful bride. Funny how she reminds me of her. Angela reminds you of your daughter? The judge asked. Oh my, no. Angela reminds me of another young girl I made a wedding dress for. Violet Westing. The heavy charms on Sidel Pulaski's bracelet clinked and clunked as she raised a full fork and flourished it in a practiced ritual before aiming it to her mouth. Chris's movements were even jerkier. She's a good person, he thought, but she thinks too much about herself. Maybe she never had anybody to love. Here, let me help you to some of this delicious sweet and sour ostrich. Their laughter drowned out the loud groan from another table where Turtle sat alone, a transistor radio plugged in her ear. The stock market had dropped another 12 points. I'm starved. Let's sit down to eat. Head held high, Grace Wexler led her husband across the restaurant. All I want is a corned beef sandwich, not a guided tour. Would you prefer to sit alone or with that young lady over there? Thought I was going to sit with you. Please be seated, Grace replied. Mr. Who will take your order shortly. Jake snatched the menu from his wife and watched her glide, gracefully, he had to admit, to the reservations desk and whisper in Who's ear. Jimmy, she calls him. That's a fine kettle of fish, he exclaimed, then turned to his dinner companion. Fine kettle of fish. I'm so hungry, even that sounds good. And from the looks of this menu, that's probably what I'll get. I'm okay, Turtle replied, the final prices of actively traded stocks tumbling in her ear. Mr. Who waddled over. I recommend the striped bass. See, what did I tell you? A kettle of fish. Turtle switched off the radio. She had heard enough bad news for one day. How about spare ribs done to a crisp? Who suggested. Then he lowered his voice. What's the point? Spread on the Packers game. See me later, Jake muttered. Go ahead and tell him, Daddy, Turtle said. I know you're a bookie. Can you stand on your legs? Sidel Pulaski asked. Can you walk at all? People never asked Chris those questions. They whispered them to his parents behind his back. No, why? What better disguise for a thief or a murderer than a wheelchair? The perfect alibi. Chris enjoyed being taken for the criminal type. Now they really were friends. When you rememnos? What? Oh, read you my notes. Soon, very soon. Sidel daintily touched the corners of her mouth with the napkin, pushed back her chair, and grabbed her polka dot crutch. That was a superb meal. I must give my compliments to the chef. She rose, knocking the chair to the floor, and clumped toward the kitchen door. Where is she going? Angela, starting up to help her partner, was distracted by shouting in the corridor. Hello in there. Anybody home? Through the restaurant door came a bundled and booted figure. He danced an elephantine jig, stomping snow on the carpet, flung a long woolen scarf from his neck, and yelled, Otis Amber is here. The roads are clear. That's when the bomb went off. Nobody move. Everybody stay where you are, Mr. Hu shouted as he rushed into the sizzling, crackling kitchen. Just a little mishap, Grace Wexler explained, taking her command post in the middle of the restaurant. Nothing to worry about. Eat up before your food gets cold. A cluster of red sparks hissed through the swinging kitchen door, kissed the ceiling, and rained a shimmering shower down and around the petrified hostess. Fireflies of color faded into her honey blonde hair and scattered into ash at her feet. Nothing to worry about, she repeated hoarsely. Just celebrating the Chinese New Year, Otis Amber shouted, adding one of his hee-hee-hee cackles. Mr. Hu leaned through the kitchen doorway, his shiny straight black hair even shinier and straighter, plastered to his forehead, water dribbling down his moon-shaped face. Call an ambulance. There's been a slight accident. Angela dashed past Mr. Hu into the kitchen. Jake Wexler made the emergency telephone call and sent Theo to the lobby to direct the ambulance attendants. Why are you standing there like a statue? Hu shouted at his son. You told everybody to stay where they were, Doug said. You're not everybody. Madame Hu tried to make the injured woman as comfortable as possible on the debris-strewn floor. Angela found the sequin spectacles, wiped off the wet, crystalline mess, and placed them on her partner's nose. Don't look so worried, Angela. I'm all right. Sidel was in pain, but she wanted attention on her own terms, not as a hapless, foolish victim of fate. Looks like a fracture, an ambulance attendant said, feeling her right ankle. Careful how you lift her. The secretary suppressed a grunt. It was bad enough being drenched by the overhead sprinkler and draped with noodles. Now they were carrying her right past them all. Grace pulled Angela away from the stretcher. You can visit your friend in a few days. Angela, Sidel moaned. Pride or not, she wanted her partner at her side. Angela stood between her determined mother and her distraught partner, paralyzed by the burden of choice. Go with your friend, Angie Pye, Jake Wexler said. Other voices chimed in. Go with Pulaski. Grace realized she had lost. Perhaps you should go to the hospital, Angela. It's been so long since you've seen your Dr. D. She winked mischievously, but only Flora Baumbach smiled back. The policeman and the fire inspector visiting the scene agreed that it was nothing more than a gas explosion. Good thing the sprinkler system worked, or Mr. Hu might have had a good fire. What kind of a fire is a good fire? Hu wanted to know. And what about the burglaries? Grace Wexler asked. I'm with the bomb squad, the policeman explained. You'll have to call the robbery detail for that. And what about the coffee shop accident? Theo asked. Also a gas explosion. Jake Wexler asked about the odds of having 2 explosions in 2 days in the same building. Nothing unusual, the fireman replied, especially in weather like this. No ventilation, snow packed over the ducts. He instructed the tenants to air out their kitchens before lighting ovens. Mrs. Wexler turned up the heat in her apartment and kept the windows open for the next 3 days. She did not want anything blowing up during Angela's party. But the Wexler apartment was exactly where the bomber had planned to set the next bomb. Chapter 14, Pairs Repaired. The snow plows plowed and a warm sun finished the job of freeing the tenants of Sunset Towers and the figure in the Westinghouse from their wintry prisons. Angela, disguised in her mother's old beaver coat and hat and in Turtle's red boots, was the first one out. Following Sidel's instructions, she hastily searched under the hood of every car in the parking lot. Nothing was there. Nothing, that is, that didn't seem to belong to an automobile engine. So much for good gracious from hood space. Next came Flora Baumbach. Behind her, a bootless turtle tiptoed through puddles. Miracle of miracles. The rusty and battered Chevy started, but the dressmaker's luck went downhill from there. First, the hood of her car flew up in the middle of traffic. Then, after 2 hours of watching mysterious symbols move across the lighted panel high on the wall of the broker's office, her eyes began to cross. After 3 hours, the grin faded from her face. "I'm getting dizzy," she said, shifting her position on the hard wooden folding chair. "And worse yet, I think I've got a splinter in my fanny." "Look, there goes one of our stocks," Turtle replied. Flora Baumbach caught a glimpse of SEAC, $8.50, as it was about to magically disappear off the left edge of the moving screen. "Oh my, I've forgotten what that means." Turtle sighed. "It means 500 shares of C was traded at $8.50 a share." "What did we pay?" "Never mind. Just write down the prices of our stocks as they cross the tape like I'm doing. Once school opens, it's all up to you." Turtle did not tell her partner that they had bought 200 shares of C at $15.25 a share. On that stock alone, they had lost $1,350, not counting commissions. It took nerves of steel to play the stock market. "The Mercedes is wiped clean and shiny like new," the doorman boasted, his face red and around old scars as he rejected a folded $5 bill. "No tips, Judge. Please, not after all you've done for the wife and me." The judge had given him the entire $10,000. J.J. Ford pocketed the bill and, to make amends for her thoughtless gesture, asked the doorman about his family. Sandy perched on the edge of a straight-backed chair, adjusted his round, wire-framed glasses, repaired at the bridge with adhesive tape across his broken nose, and told about his 2 children. "2 boys still in high school, 1 daughter married and expecting my 3rd grandchild. Her husband just lost his job, so they all moved in with us. Another daughter who works part-time as a typist. She plays the piano real good, and 2 sons who work in a brewery." "It must have been difficult supporting such a large family," the judge said. "Not so bad. I picked up odd jobs here and there after I got fired from the Westing plant for trying to organize the union, but mostly I boxed. I wasn't no middleweight contender, but I wasn't bad either. Got my face smashed up a few times too many, though. Still get some pretty bad headaches, and my brain gets sort of fuzzy. Some dummy of a partner you got stuck with, huh, Judge?" "We'll do just fine, partner." Judge Forge's attempt at familiarity fell flat. "I did try to phone you, but your name was not listed." "We don't have a phone no more. Couldn't afford it with the kids making so many calls, but I did make some headway on our clues. Want to see?" Sandy removed a paper from the inside of his cap and placed it on the desk. Judge Forge noticed a flask protruding from the back pocket of his uniform, but his breath smelled of peppermint. The clues as figured out by Alexander McSouthern's. "Skies am shining brother." Skies could stand for Sykes. Dr. Sykes witnessed the will. Brother. Amber, Otis Amber. Shinning or shining. Shin, the middle names of James Shin Who or What Turtle Kicks. Brother, Theo or Chris Theodorakis. "Remarkable," the judge commented to Sandy's delight. "However, we are looking for 1 name, not 6. "Gee, Judge, I forgot," Sandy said dejectedly. Judge Ford told him about Theo's proposal, but Sandy refused to go along. "It seems too easy, the clues adding up to 1 message, especially for a shrewd guy like Westing. Let's stick it out together, just the 2 of us. After all, I got me the smartest partner of them all." Shallow flattery for the big tipper, the judge thought. McSouthers was not a stupid man, if only he was less obsequious and less of a gossip. The doorman scratched his head. "What I can't figure out, Judge, is why I'm one of the heirs, unless Sam Westing just up and died, and there's no murderer, unless Sam Westing is out there to get somebody from his grave." "I agree with you entirely, Mr. McSouthers. What we have to find out is who these 16 heirs are, and which one, as you say, was Westing out to get." Sandy beamed. They were going to play it his way. "What you need is an advertising campaign. What I need is my half of the $10,000. $5,000 is what I estimate the redecorating and the newspaper ads will cost." "Get out of here. Get out." Grace stared at Hugh's smooth, broad face, at the devilish tufts of eyebrows so high above those flashing eyes. Then she turned her back and walked out. Sometimes she wondered about that man. No, he couldn't be the murderer. He couldn't even kill the water bug in the sink this morning. Grace spun around to see if she was being followed on the footstep-hushing carpet in the third-floor hall. No one was there, but she heard voices. They were coming from her kitchen. It was nothing, just Otis Amber shouting at Crow, something about losing their clues. I remember them, Otis, Crow replied in a soft voice. She felt strangely at peace. Just this morning she had been given the chance to hide her love in Angela's bag, the big tapestry shoulder bag she carries next to her heart. Now she must pray that the boy comes back. I remember them too. That's not the point, Otis Amber argued. What if somebody else finds them, Crow? Are you listening to me, Crow? No, but Grace Wexler was listening. Really, Mr. Amber, can't you find another time to discuss your affairs with my cleaning woman? And where are you going, Crow? Crow was buttoned up in a black moth-eaten winter coat. A black shawl covered her head. It's freezing in here. Otis Amber shut the window. Grace opened the window. The last thing I need is a gas explosion, she said peevishly. Boom, he replied. The two women were so startled that the delivery boy sneaked up on the unsuspecting for the rest of the week, shouting, boom. Besides shouting boom, Otis Amber delivered groceries from the shopping center to Sunset Towers, back and forth, to and fro. Not only did the tenants have to restock their bare shelves, they had to add Westing paper products by the gross to their orders. Idiots, just because the will said buy Westing paper products, he muttered, hefting a bulky bag from the compartment attached to his bike. Even Crow was using Westing disposable diapers to polish the silver and Westing paper towels to scrub the floors. Is that what happened to their clues? Poor Crow. She's taking this game harder than he had expected. She's been acting strange again. Boom! Otis Amber shouted as the intern hurried by. Idiot, muttered Denton Deer. Denton Deer paced the floor. Listen, kid, I'd like to help you, but I'm only an intern specializing in plastic surgery. It would be different if you wanted a nose job or a facelift. He had meant to be amusing. It sounded cruel. Chris had not asked for charity. All he wanted was to play the game with the intern. All the intern wanted was half of the $10,000. I hear your brother suggested sharing clues. Sounds like a fun idea. No response. Maybe the kid thinks I'm the murderer. The tenants must think so, the way they peered over their shoulders at that delivery boy shouting like that. Why me? I'm a doctor. I took an oath to save lives, not take them. I'm a very busy man, Chris. I have lots of sick people depending on me. Oh, well. Plowing his fingers through his stringy, mouse-brown hair to keep it out of his eyes, when would he find time for a haircut? He seated himself next to the wheelchair. The clues are in my locker. What were they? The rain in Spain falls mainly on the plain. Plain, grain, shed. Chris spoke slowly. He had practiced his recitation over and over, hour after lonely hour. Grain, oats, Otis Amber. Shed, she, F. Ford. F. Ford lives in 4D. Ford, apartment 4D. Good thinking, Chris. The intern rose. Is that all? Chris decided not to tell him about the limper on the lawn, not until the next time. His partner would have to visit him a next time and a next time, as long as he didn't sign the check. Now, about signing the check, Denton Deer said. Chris shook his head no. On a bench in the lobby, Angela embroidered her trousseau, waiting for Denton. Dad had tried to teach her to drive, but she was too timid, he too impatient. Why bother with driving lessons, her mother said. Anyone as pretty as you can always find a handsome young man to chauffeur you. She should have insisted. She should have said no just once to her mother. Just once. It was too late now. Theo came in with an armload of books. Hi, Angela. Hey, I found that quotation, or rather the librarian found it. You know, may God thy gold refine. Really? Angela thought it unnecessary to remind him that it was Flora Baumbach and Turtle who had asked about the quotation, not she. What lush lips, what white teeth, what fine and shiny hair. Theo fumbled between the pages of a chemistry book for the index card. On it was written the third verse of America the Beautiful. America, America, may God thy gold refine, till all success be nobleness and every gain divine. Theo had begun reading the refrain and ended up singing. He shyly laughed off his foolishness. I guess it doesn't have anything to do with money or the will, just Uncle Sam's patriotism popping up again. Thank you, Theo. Angela stuffed her embroidery in the tapestry bag on seeing Denton Deer rush off the elevator. Hello, Dr. Deer. How about a game of chess? Let's go, the intern said, ignoring Theo. Sandy opened the front door for the couple, whistling America the Beautiful. The doorman was a good whistler, thanks to his chipped front tooth. I can't drive you home. I'm on duty tonight. I'll take a cab. Why must you go back to the hospital? Your crazy partner isn't dying, you know. She's not crazy. She made up her so-called wasting disease. I called that crazy. Nothing was wrong with her legs until the explosion in the Chinese restaurant. You're wrong. First you asked me to look in on her. Now you don't want my opinion. Anyhow, I called in a psychiatrist. Maybe you should talk to him too. I've never seen you so troubled. What's wrong? The wedding dress isn't ready? The guest list is too long? You'll have to cope with more important matters than that once we're married. Unless you don't want to get married. Is that it? Angela twisted the engagement ring her mother made her wear in spite of the rash. No, she did not want to get married, not right now, but she couldn't say it. She couldn't tell him, them, not like that. Denton would be so hurt. Her mother, the engagement was announced in the newspaper, the wedding gown, the shower, but once they found out she wasn't their perfect Angela. How long has she been sitting there in the hospital corridor? A man in a business suit, the psychiatrist, came out of Siddell's room. You must be Angela, he said. How had Siddell described her? A pretty young thing? I hear you're going to marry one of our interns. She was going to get married, her one claim to fame. How is Miss Pulaski, doctor? Do you mean is she crazy? No, no more or less than anybody else in this town. But the crippling disease, she had made that up? So what? The woman was lonely and wanted some attention, so she did something about it, and quite creatively, too. Those painted crutches are a touch of genius. Is that normal, I mean? It's not insane to shock people into noticing who you are? The doctor patted Angela's cheek as though she were a child. No one was hurt by her little deception. Now go in and say hello to your friend. Hello, Siddell. Without makeup, without jewelry, clothed only in a white hospital gown, she looked older, softer. She looked like a sad and homely human being. You talked to the doctors? It's a simple fracture, Angela replied. What else? Siddell turned her face to the wall. The doctor says your disease is incurable, but could have a remission lasting 5 years, even more, if you take good care of yourself and don't overdo it. The doctor said that? Maybe a few people could be trusted. Did you bring my makeup? I must look a mess. In the overstuffed tapestry bag under Siddell's cosmetic case, Angela found a letter. It was a strange letter written in a tense and rigid hand. Forgive me, my daughter. God bless you, my child. Delight in your love, and the devil take Dr. Deer. Hast thou found me, O mine enemy? The time draws near. Taped at the bottom were 2 clues. Thy beautiful. And that is where we are stopping today. So we did learn of some new clues that I'd like to remind you to add to your clue cards. We found out, for example, that Jake Wexler, the dad, is a bookie. We know that there's been more burglaries going on, but also an additional bomb that has gone off. We find out some more information about what J.J. Ford is doing and more information really about Angela and Chris. I feel like we get to know them better in these 2 chapters. And then remember the second activity of writing the summary. We will review those clues and that information once we return tomorrow. I do also want you to add, I haven't done it yet, but I will have this for tomorrow, add thy beautiful to this list, because that will also come into play as we're analyzing the song America the Beautiful. Okay, that is it for today. I hope you are enjoying reading the story as much as I am. I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye, dolphins.